the one apartment I looked at was just really kind of crappy and more than I wanted to pay. And I saw a house that was available for sale. Within 5 days, I was under contract. And that single decision that was really just on a whim changed the course of my life, and have been really an investor since that point in time.
This is the Better Life Podcast, where we talk about real estate investing, building wealth, and all in all living a better life. My name is Brandon Turner, and I've spent my life investing in real estate to achieve financial freedom. And alongside my co-host, Mr. Cam Cathcart, we want to help you do the same. On the show, you're going to hear from world-class guests who have been handpicked to help you level up your investing, your leadership, your goals, your habits, and more to become the very best version of yourself. So join us as we explore the habits, the actions, the beliefs that it takes to build wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. Cam Cathcart,
What's up?
welcome to the podcast.
Dude,
man.
I'm excited.
I got a question for you.
Okay, what is it?
What do you call a giant pile, a massive pile of cats?
What?
A meowton. That one actually made me laugh out loud when I read it. Speaking of cats, today's episode has nothing to do with them because the property type that we're talking about today do not allow pets.
Hey,
At least that's my
a
assumption.
great tie-in.
All right,
I would
that was
assume
a decent
that,
tie-in, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right. So today's episode is with a buddy of mine named Atticus, who is the founder and CEO of a company called PadSplit. PadSplit is the leader in the rent by the room revolution, we'll call it.
Yeah, it's gonna help solve the affordability crisis.
It is. It's a huge piece of it. And I bought 2 houses to use as PadSplits over the past few weeks. Very excited to be getting those things online soon. And I'm a huge fan of it. So I actually reached out to PadSplit and said, hey, can we get Atticus on the show? And he flew out here just for this episode.
Dude. And it was so good, man.
So good.
I want to get get into PadSplit.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm exploring the options,
Yeah.
but the cash flow on it
The
seems
cash flow
incredible.
is insane.
You're helping people find housing. And I mean, he brings up a lot of good points of why PadSplit is better than really any other rental style.
Yeah,
So,
it's awesome. So
yeah.
that and more today on this episode. But before we get to that, let's hear a quick word from today's show sponsor. This episode is brought to you by our friends at TurboTenant and Ballpoint Marketing. These 2 companies are big supporters of the show, and they know how to work with real estate investors and help real estate investors grow their businesses. So be sure to stay tuned to hear how you can get discounts and free stuff from them both. And as you probably know, all the profits from the show go to charities of the guest choosing. So when you listen to the sponsors on the show and you work with these hand-chosen by me sponsors, you're actually doing good for the world. Now let's get to the show. Atticus LeBlanc, welcome to the show.
Nailed it.
I nailed it. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Thank
good,
you.
right?
Thank you. Yeah,
I tried to put my inner French, what's the guy from Beauty and the Beast? The French candlestick. You know what I'm talking
Gaston.
Oh, yeah.
about?
No.
Gaston. What's the candlestick? It's like a Lumiere.
Yeah,
That
there you
guy.
go.
I had to put my inner Lumiere to say your last
This
name.
is how you know you have young kids.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. So I know you, Atticus, as the founder and CEO of PadSplit.com, which is a amazing company that I just bought my first PadSplit. We're going to talk about later. I'm a huge fan of what you guys do, so I'm excited to dig into the behind the scenes a little bit. I know you as a father of 4 boys.
4 boys, yes.
I know you as a man who can hold his breath for 4.5 minutes. I'm going to ask you about that one later. Don't let me forget that, Cam.
All right, I won't.
And I know you again as the guy who's making the best shot at affordable housing at scale in America happening is you. So I know you as all of that. Yeah, that's a big thing, but I believe you have the best shot of solving the affordable housing crisis in America, and you're leading the way, and I love that. But before we get to all that, that's who you are today. Who was Atticus LeBlanc?
Yeah, I think I've always been an independent, kind of never quite fit in anywhere. I love this description that one of our investors uses of people called misfits, not missionary, not mercenary, but somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
And I can definitely identify with that. I think I've been that way since I was a kid. I've always been a little Don Quixote-esque, just charging at various windmills from a very, very young age.
I haven't heard a good Don Quixote reference in a while. That's good, man. Thank you for bringing
we
that
all
up.
need a little Rocinante in our lives as well.
Do you know how I know the story of Don Quixote? This might resonate with you. It will not with you, Cam. Sorry, you're too young. But you might remember, but you might be too old.
I bet I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
Wishbone?
It is Wishbone. That's what I was going to say. Do you remember Wishbone at all?
No.
Okay,
no,
so maybe I'm really shocked right now. So Wishbone was the greatest television show of all time.
Okay.
It was on PBS. It was a little dog, and they dressed him up in various characters, and they taught like literature, basically, by telling the story of Wishbone, the dog. How do you know Wishbone? You were like 4.
Dude,
like when I was like 12.
PBS, Wishbone,
I guess
Zoom, Clifford the Big Red Dog. Those were like back to back.
How old are you?
32? 33.
You're 33. I'm almost 40 and
I am 44. But Clifford's been around forever.
Yeah.
Clifford has been around forever.
Zoom? Was that?
I don't know if I remember Zoom. I know like Zoom Boomafoo or whatever. That was a thing. Anyway, whatever. Don Quixote. Back to you, Don.
Yeah. It's I mean, I think from a very early age, I was just always kind of had causes that I was particularly passionate about. Not necessarily for any good reason, but would just take on these causes and really kind of run after them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
My mom tells me this story that apparently I was in the New York Times when I was 9 because, and you guys may not remember, there was a guy named David Duke who ran for, he was a state representative in Louisiana.
Guy
Yeah, exactly. And his campaign headquarters when he ran, I think he was running for governor at the time, was like around the corner from my house. I grew up just outside New Orleans. And the guy who was running against was, his last name was Treen. So I made like a Treen tree and was like at 9 years old, gathering the neighborhood kids to like protests and cheer for this guy Treen, who I didn't know him either, but
but he wasn't a racist. So.
Yeah, exactly. That was like the limit of my political knowledge at the time.
Racist, not racist. We'll go with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good call.
So yeah, I mean, but I've just kind of found different things to kind of chase, and I think I've just always been a little bit outside of the bounds. And somebody told me yesterday that's really a gray area, and I was like, when you say gray area, I hear safe space.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, my nickname in college at some point was Shortcut.
There you go.
Because like just trying to find a different way to do things.
Yeah.
And so I think that's always been part of who I am, and just maybe a little unconventional, maybe certainly contrarian mindset. Always very value oriented, both from an ethical standpoint, but more just like I'm a cheapskate.
Yeah.
And very much a value-based investor as well.
Investor. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I know you've done some real estate prior to the whole PadSplit thing. You were just like me, and then you grew up and became a CEO.
I don't know about that, but
talk us through it. How'd you get into real estate? The idea of it, where did it come from? Walk us through that journey a little bit.
Actually, I thought I was going to be an English major and be an attorney and maybe a judge. My mom was an attorney, hence my name Atticus. Atticus Finch, Kill Mockingbird reference. And so I think that was maybe part of my contrarian nature and just always wanting a cause. Parents wanted to make sure that I had someone to look up to, I guess. But yeah, I thought I was going to be an English major, and that lasted like 6 weeks, freshman year in college, where my English professor hated me. I think the feelings were mutual. And grading is very subjective in English. I took a course that was a role-playing game around real estate and development, and I just had a ton of fun. And so that was really the start of my interest in real estate. When I got out of school, I followed my then girlfriend, now wife, down to Atlanta and started renting a room. Got a job making $30,000 a year and found a room for rent. Started doing that for 6 months, and then saw an opportunity. I thought, okay, well, his lease was up, had to move out. Maybe I should go find an apartment. The one apartment I looked at was just really kind of crappy and more than I wanted to pay. And I saw a house that was available for sale. Within 5 days, I was under contract. And that single decision that was really just on a whim changed the course of my life, and have been really an investor since that point in time. So that was 2003 when I bought that house. Did my first investment property in 2005. And then I was a commercial broker from 05 to 07 on the land side, which for those of you who remember the great financial crisis, that was terrible timing, like just enough time to get my feet under me. And then my first son, I know you're celebrating a new baby. So my first son was born in September of 07, at which point my wife told me that she wanted to stop working because she had really been supporting me. She had been like the breadwinner for the last couple of years. And the next 3 weeks, all of my deals fell apart. So I made a total of 10 grand in '07, had the new baby, had a wife to take care of. And it's like, oh gosh, what the heck am I going to do? And that's really when I saw houses around Atlanta were way cheaper than they should have been, well under $50,000, and started buying just a bunch. Starting in 2008, I bought 16 in '08, and then probably another 50 the next year. And we kept going. We ended up owning about 650 units between
650.
2008, 2012. Between most, I'd say probably 150, 160 of those were single family, and then apartments. And then we started buying boutique commercial deals, and then we started buying shopping centers and office condos. We were buying anything we could.
That's incredible. Do you still own those, or have you?
Most of them. Yeah, most of them we still do. Yeah, we're certainly a Burr strategy before I even knew the acronym. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was really this idea of, look, I don't want to be dependent on anyone to determine whether or not I can take care of my family. And I have this saying, like, if you're going to go whale hunting, you better learn to catch minnows along the way.
Yeah.
And I had this idea: if I can own 10 houses, then I can cover myself. I actually never owned the 10 on my own. I got to 3, and then everything else was mostly 50-50 with my partner, starting in 2009 onward. But yeah, it was just this idea of create that residual cash flow so that I don't have to worry if I get hit by a bus or if I get sick, whatever it happens to be. I know that my young son at the time and my wife are taken care of.
Yeah. So where did the idea of PadSplit come from?
Yeah. It started in 2009, actually. So I had one of those properties I bought in '08 was vacant in '09. And I came to know these neighborhoods really, really well right around downtown Atlanta. And I walked the neighborhoods. I mean, I basically had house by house memorized for large portions of the city so that I could bid as soon as something came available. And I saw these houses that were rooming houses. They were just known as rooming houses. I was like, my degree was in architecture and urban studies. I don't ever remember hearing the term rooming houses outside of the context of like tenement homes in New York in the 1920s. And I saw them everywhere. And there were signs, room for rent, on telephone poles and stuff around town. And usually it was pretty obvious, like what these things were. Well, one was next door to this vacant house I had, and I got to know most of the people in the neighborhood, but specifically 2 guys that were in that house. And this house was terrible. There was tarp on the roof. There was no heating and air conditioning in Atlanta. Like, it gets cold in the winter. It's really hot in the summer. There were wires hanging off the side. And this guy, Mitch, who was on Social Security income, he made a total income of $735 a month. And his buddy, Otis, was making $685 a month, both kind of disability income. And they came to me one day and said, hey, this house is being foreclosed. We're all going to get evicted. Can we come rent rooms from you? And we'll pay $100 a week. And there were a number of thoughts that went through my head. Like, one, you hear this rule about 30% of your income should go to your housing. Well, I don't know who invented that rule. I've heard it was like a Prussian king 400 years ago. But I did the math. I'm like, well, you're making $685 a month and you're paying $100 a week. That's a lot more than a third of your income. And I started to adapt my thinking to, well, but if you have food stamps or those types of benefits, and you have free public transportation, all your utilities and furniture included in this rent, maybe this is misguided thinking about this 30% thing. And then the second thing I realized was, well, every apartment manager in the city, maybe around the country, uses this 3 times rent for your income requirement, which means that at $685 a month, you don't qualify for anything. And we were in the worst financial crisis in my generation for sure. So that's wild. You have fixed income guaranteed by the government, and yet you don't qualify for anything. And then the last piece was, well, if Otis pays me $100 and Mitch pays me $100, and then I have 2 other rooms in that house, I was only ever going to rent it for $800 a month. Well, I'm going to net more renting it to these folks who wouldn't typically qualify for anything than I would renting it wholesale or just as an entire unit. And so that was the first one. And I compared the profit and loss statements of our portfolio every year. And for 7 years, you could see these houses were just far outperforming anything else, not just because the real-time cash flow is greater, but a lot of things that are just ignored by most real estate investors, even a lot of more professional real estate investors, your turn costs and your vacancy loss.
Yeah.
And a combination of those three things, your real-time cash flow, your lack of significant turn costs, and your total lack of vacancy loss meant that this was just a much better model.
Did you ever, when you were doing that, like look at your cost per hour in the sense, were you spending way more time on those?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. Great question. So yeah, I mean, 2009, I mean, it was me. Like I was the person doing everything. I was the acquisitions guy, the renovations guy, the Spanish translator.
Yeah.
Like, and I would have to go on a weekly basis, because we can talk about weekly payments in a minute, but they're far more effective at getting people to pay. And I was going out multiple times a week to collect money orders. I never wanted to collect cash. There were people in this business who did and probably still do collect cash. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to be that person. And my rule was I want to feel safe going to the property after dark with my wife if necessary.
Yeah.
And that also meant like no cash. But yeah, I was going multiple times, and that was really the challenge, was how do you make this scale? And in 2009, it did not. There's no way that this business scaled or was capable of scaling in 2009, collecting money orders or cash. Mm-hmm. And so it was a tremendous amount of work. And the question over time was, gosh, what if you could take this model and handle the operational aspects that make it really difficult for owners and property managers? Mm-hmm. And that is eventually what PadSplit became, and that was the nexus of the idea.
Wow. So whenever I tell anybody, I mean, I've been like long before we met, and I've been a champion of PadSplit since like the moment I first heard about it, because I'm in love with this strategy. I just wrote an ebook called like 20 cash flow strategies that work in 2025. And like, I think the first one I put in there was like a co-living situation, right? So I'm a huge fan of this. I've been telling everyone about it. I'm buying my own. I just closed on one. I should close another today. Very excited about it. Every time though, no matter what, everyone says to me, "Oh, that sounds like hell to manage that," right? Yeah. So I want to dive into that first, because that's what everyone listening goes like, "Oh, sure, that would be terrible." But before we do that, just that's a little teaser that's coming. I want to get to today's charity question, and that is every episode of this podcast, we give the guest an opportunity to share maybe a mission, a charity, something that they want us to give money towards, because all the profits from this show go directly to charity. So
awesome.
Where are we, where are we supporting today?
So Gateway Center.
What's this?
In Atlanta. They are one of the primary points of entry for individuals experiencing homelessness in Atlanta. I know the CEO there. I've known him for years, and they're doing great work. And it's all comers, right? And we see a number of graduates from their program that ultimately, once they reach a better point of stability, like we're kind of that first rung on the housing ladder. But yeah, great organization, and I mean, it's really difficult work, and really glad that there are great folks out there doing it.
I love it, man. Well, we'll send some money that way, and appreciate you. And with that said, all right, so picture this. I just signed a lease with a tenant. They seemed great on paper. And then a few months in, everything kind of started going sideways. Suddenly, they're missing rent deadlines. There's a broken window. The neighbors are complaining about them. I realized I put someone in my rental property without properly screening them. And now I was living a landlord's nightmare. But lucky for you, you don't have to make the same mistakes as I made early on, because you have the luxury of using TurboTenant. So if you're managing any rental properties right now, and you're still trying to vet tenants and collect rent and keep track of work orders and market all your vacancies, look, TurboTenant is going to be your best friend. It's an app that allows you to do all of that and so much more, all in the same platform. Plus, it's like stupid cheap, like seriously less than your Netflix subscription. I don't even know why it's so cheap. And if you want it even cheaper, I got a discount for you. Just go to turbotenant.com/betterlife and use code Brandon10 for 10% off. Or go to my Instagram and DM me the word toolbox, and I'll send you a link to a bunch of cool free tools that they have, like the rent estimator, financial freedom calculator, and more. Hey, so many of you have heard me tell that story about how I bought my daughter Rosie a fourplex, like a rental property, the week she was born, and how we put it on an 18-year, mortgage payoff plan so it'll be paid off when she graduates from high school. So essentially, my tenants are paying for Rosie's entire college. Now that's pretty awesome, right? Not to mention, it's also making almost like $1,000 a month in cash flow. That's double awesome. But I don't think I've ever shared really exactly how I found that deal. So here goes. I found it through direct mail marketing. And here's how. I simply built a high quality lead list of a lot of names and addresses of potential sellers, and I sent out a whole bunch of mail to every person on that list. And then I talked on the phone to a ton of people, and then I finally got one person that was interested enough to sell me the property, and I got a deal at a great price. So building that giant lead engine like that, it works, but it takes a ton of time, knowledge, and effort, which can really slow down an investor's growth, which is why I reached out to my friend Ryan with Ballpoint Marketing. I asked him to sponsor this show because they're the best at doing everything that I just talked about. Like, they're literally going to help you build your entire lead engine. You're going to get a one-on-one call where they're going to help you figure out what you want and then build your lead list for you. Their robots are going to handwrite the postcards with a real pen, which is super cool. They're going to send them out, and they'll even answer the phone calls for you. Plus, they'll help you track it all inside of a CRM that they create for you. I know, it's crazy awesome. And it's going to help you land way more deals consistently. And because you're awesome and because you listen to this show, you're going to get a discount when you tell them that I sent you, or just use code Brandon when checking out with them. I love Ballpoint Marketing and officially recommend them to all my friends and masterminds. So if you're ready to kick your deal flow up a notch, getting more quality leads without pulling your hair out, just go to ballpointmarketing.com/betterlife. Or just shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word ballpoint, like one word, ballpoint, and I'll hook you up with them directly. All right, we're back. So before I get to that question of how do you manage this kind of stuff, and I want to talk about the profitability, why this makes so much sense money-wise, I do want to mention that I am actually doing a webinar about PadSplit on February 27th, 2025. So if you're watching this before then, you should totally come. It is currently planned for evening time, East Coast. So I want to share, about my journey so far, what I've done. I'm going to have a rep from PadSplit on there, talk about some of the logistics around that. If you have any interest in maybe doing a PadSplit, please come to that. You can sign up by just going to abetterlife.com/PadSplit webinar /PAD, PAD, split webinar. That's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, how the heck do you manage a PadSplit? How do you deal with 8 people or whatever in a house?
Yeah.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah. So, the reason for PadSplit's existence is to try to address that problem. So I'd say our services fit into 3 buckets. The first is, how do you fill rooms quickly? And so we've created a massive lead gen engine, and not just the lead gen, and we'll post on all 60 different rental sites as well. But we own the keywords in a lot of cases around room for rent in whatever jurisdiction you happen to be looking in. And then on top of that, how do you move people in without any showings? Because if you try to do this on your own and you have people who are like, oh, well, I'm going to meet you there at Friday at 3 p.m. Or you tell 10 people that you're going to meet them there at Friday at 3 p.m. And guess what? Nobody shows up. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's touchless move-ins, where you book and there are access instructions. If you have a Wi-Fi enabled lock, we can be integrated with that system so that as soon as they book, there's a code that's generated for their access.
That's cool.
Immediately. And those people are often moving in within 48 hours. So no showings, touchless move-ins, and lead gen. That's kind of the first bucket. Second bucket is your payments. And so we're handling payments collections. We're collecting on a weekly or per payday basis. But that means if you got 6 people renting rooms in a house, well, that's more than 25 payments per month that you're realistically taking care of. And so that becomes really onerous really quickly, particularly if you're talking about 2, 5, 10, 20, 100, 200 houses, right? Mm-hmm. It becomes really unruly really quickly. And then the last piece is, oh gosh, you have 6, 7, 8 people that are sharing this home, and Johnny stole my peanut butter. Susie's playing her music too loud. There are dirty dishes in the sink, all of those things. So we have 24/7 customer service and a lot of technology tools that are built to triage those types of items, whether it is somebody stealing my peanut butter to, oh my God, I'm afraid for my life.
Yeah.
And we've had over 40,000 stays at this point. So God help me. I hope I've seen everything that there is to see.
So if somebody reaches out to you on your 24/7, hotline, are you reaching out to the homeowner, or do you guys have people in place in those different markets to take care of it?
Yeah. I mean, like most of the people who are taking those calls are trained in trauma-informed care, and they have lots of different protocols that they can run down to try to resolve independently. Some things are absolutely decision of the host to make. Like, do you want to remove this person or not? Right. One thing that I'm pretty passionate about with regard to co-living generally, and just human nature, is that you need to give people choices, and you need to give them agency over those choices. And so the most powerful tool that we have as a marketplace compared to anybody else out there is, let's say, Cam, you and Brandon are staying together, and Brandon's a scary guy, and you want to get out of there. Well, or maybe it's just because he cooks with garlic, which is like my first roommate in that house that I rented. Well, if I tell you, look, whether he's scary or whether he's not scary, if you take me up on my offer for a free transfer to another home, then I know, okay, you're voting with your feet, and giving you the ability to vote with your feet is a huge, huge tool for us. Because it means that, like, in a fight or flight response, you always have the ability to choose flight.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty major advantage of just a network of options like ours. But it works the other way too, right? Let's say, I don't know, you're working for TSA at the local airport, and you get a much better paying job, but it's across town, or maybe it's across the country. And now you have the ability for real economic mobility, even without the economics, where you can transfer to another PadSplit across town, across the street, across the country, with really no significant outlay of cash.
Really?
And you can do that multiple times over. So yeah, we see on our residents who we refer to as members take advantage of that regularly. But it works both ways in terms of just a mitigant for any issues inside the home, as well as if people want to move up or into other opportunities.
And are you guys going through the background check process, or is that on the homeowners?
Yeah, so we conduct our own background screening. Most of our owners have a program in place called Say Yes. You can choose auto book, instant book, or you can evaluate the member yourself. So most of our owners choose the Say Yes program, where they're evaluating as well.
Yeah.
You guys may know this about background checks and screening in general. Like, there's no 100% solution. And if you're real, like, the FBI background check, like, it's not really a thing in any short term. And so what a lot of our owners do, they're evaluating things that maybe legally we can't do, right? If they're looking at non-convictions, for instance, or this person was arrested but was released. Well, we can't make any decision on that particular issue, whereas it may absolutely impact how an owner thinks about a particular approval,
right?
Whether it should or not, different question. But yeah, I mean, they could be interviewing a resident, and we give them their phone numbers when they're approving a particular member. And yeah, they making decisions for all sorts of interesting reasons. A lot of times they're living in the home as well. So, big issues with just trust generally.
Let me backtrack a little bit and maybe ask a question I could have asked at the beginning, but I like to wait a little bit. Yeah. What is a PadSplit? Like, what? Explain what. For those who are like listening right now, they're saying, "Wait, I don't even understand. What are they talking about? What is an example of one? What's that look like?"
Yeah, so it's funny. Like, PadSplit has become a noun, a verb, and a business.
Yeah.
I'll kind of divide it from there.
Like Airbnb. That's
Airbnb. Yeah.
PadSplit is so
exactly.
cool. It's
you guys own the name, which is also your company name at Kleenex. It's powerful.
I will say I did think about this when I picked the name, and have intentionally used it as a verb and a noun.
Yeah, I have a hard time when I'm talking to somebody. I'm like, yeah, I do a PadSplit. I'm like, well, it's co-living, but also maybe rent by the room, or I'm like, I just call it a pad split, and I think that's going to be the industry term.
Well, I didn't want to use the word rooming house, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And a rooming house here in the Northwest is like congregate housing, and somewhere it's shared housing. So I was like, all right, we're just calling this pad split, and it means this certain level of standard. So I'll start with the business case. So pad split as a business is a two-sided marketplace that provides access to usually private rooms in shared dwellings for, call it, the 50% of renters who can't afford the rent, who can't access a traditional rental. And then on the host side, for owners, we are generating 2x net operating income for those owners relative to whatever their traditional long-term rental strategy happens to be. And we sit in between those two, providing services under those three buckets that I outlined, which are the lead gen, getting people into rooms, filling them quickly, keeping them filled, collecting the payments, and then just a lot of the communications, reputation, accountability issues, and customer service. Those are the three things that we do. And then for a pad split, as a noun, it is the idea of typically a shared rental, so home access to private rooms that are more affordable and accessible than your traditional apartment, but also more profitable for the owner. And then pad split as a verb is just, I am going to split up this property and it is going to meet this base level standard. All of our standards, in order to be listed on the platform, like, you have to meet HUD standards. And so that's a pretty key differentiator between rooming house or even just traditional co-living relative to pad split, is there are rules and there's a structure in place both on the resident side and on the host side. So that's
that's a pad split.
Yeah, that's
pad split and a pad split.
That's right. That's your pad split glossary.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so you mentioned the 50% of people. I think this is an important point. I think the natural assumption for a co-living, rent by the room, pad split concept, we're just going to go pad split from here on out. Industry-wide, nationwide, that's what we're calling it, everybody. I've decided. So, no, but on this idea, people think it's either A, students, because student rentals have been around forever, rent by the room student stuff, or homeless people, like real, like, but you're saying 50% of people, this is who they're for. What do you mean by that? Explain that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can look up multiple studies just that demonstrate 50% of Americans cannot afford the rent that they're paying. But let's just use census data for a second. So there are about 44 million renters total in the United States. Well, over 14 million of those people are one or two person households that also earn less than $35,000 a year. Now, for any property managers or landlords out there who are doing that 3-to-1 income to rent ratio, what you realize is, at 35 grand, that means those people don't qualify for a $1,000 a month apartment.
Yep.
Well, we're in Maui. Like, how many units are available under $1,000 a month? I haven't found one.
Yep. Doesn't exist.
And that's true, not just in really expensive places like Hawaii, but across the country. I mean, any major metropolitan area, it's really, really difficult to find that kind of process or those kind of prices. But then more importantly, the access itself becomes this other barrier. So you have two major issues with affordable housing. Generally, when people talk about the affordable housing crisis, I think about it in two distinct ways. One is a supply question, right? Just basic economics, supply versus demand. We, quote, don't have enough housing. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But the second question that nobody really focuses on is access. And so if you're talking about somebody who's making 35 grand a year, heck, even 50 grand a year, well, they're not going to qualify for most, if any, of the apartments in those areas. Even if they did, even if they qualified for them, when they have to pay the upfront deposit, when they have to furnish the place, when they have to pay an electricity deposit or a water deposit or a gas deposit, well, multiple studies out there indicate that at least 50% of Americans don't have $400 for an emergency expense. So how on earth are they going to come with $3 grand to be able to move into those places? And so that's really the problem that we're facing is, one, the places don't exist in big enough numbers to actually address the people in need. But two, even if they did, and people are still looking for 1 month or 2 month deposits, plus these other barriers, and saying, I'm not going to include utilities, and of course it's not going to be furnished, nobody can even access them, even if they did qualify.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, well, so let's talk about the financial side. Like you said, I think you used the word 2x income or something like that. Like what?
Yeah.
Like why would I choose a PadSplit financially over why would I go through the pain of having to do all the work needed with a PadSplit, make it worth my while?
Yeah. So historical average has been 2x increase in net operating income compared to whatever your long-term rental yield would be. And that's applicable in pretty much every market. I mean, we see some owners that are getting 3x, 4x, especially if they're self-managing. But on the average, you could expect 2x increase. And the idea is pretty simple. And we didn't start this, by the way. So rent by the room has been around literally for centuries, if not millennia. But the reason why it works is you think about what is the highest rent per square foot for an individual rental unit, right? It's like a studio. Studio apartment is worth significantly more than a 2-bedroom, than a 3-bedroom. And especially if you look at single family rentals, your first bedroom is really the only one that is market rate. Your second bedroom is less, third bedroom is less, fourth bedroom is less. The difference between a 5-bedroom and a 4-bedroom house on the rental market is negligible, right? And so what this sets up for co-living is, all right, well, I'm going to take that first bedroom, that's the one at market rate, and I'm going to price it at 60, 70% of a market rate studio. And then I'll bump it up a little bit more to include the utilities. But now I no longer have diminishing returns. So my second bedroom is worth exactly the same, third bedroom is worth exactly the same, fourth bedroom, etc. So in a single family scenario, usually at 4 bedrooms is that tipping point in most US markets where you're better off renting by the room than you are renting the entire property. In an apartment setting, it's often 2 bedrooms. So if you're better than 2 bedrooms, then you're better off rent by the room.
So a couple thoughts there. I want to talk about the apartment side at some point. So the idea there is the more bedrooms you can fit into a property, the more money you should make, because everyone, right? That's how it should work. How many bedrooms is too many? What are you seeing? What are people doing? I mean, are these 4-bedroom average, or is it 5, 6, 10?
Yeah, I mean, average is probably 6.5 on the platform. I mean, you have people who rent out 1 bedroom, particularly in an owner-occupied property. They'll rent out 1 or 2. We have some Airbnb conversions where they're already set up, they're already furnished. It's a 3-bedroom. Maybe they were in a kind of a Class B type area. It's not on the beach, but they just can't get the occupancy that they want, and so they'll convert that 3 as is. But it's a nicer product. And then we have some that are 13, 14 bedrooms. So it really just depends on the individual strategy. It kind of comes back to that agency question I was talking about earlier. I think of PadSplit as the rails by which you or any other investor can run their business. And it is pointless in my mind to try to think that I, living in Atlanta, will know what's happening in Maui or any other market where there are local experts. And so the question is, how do I empower those local investors with the tools, information, and incentives to go set up their own businesses in those areas? And in some cases, they want a very high bedroom count, and they're catering to call it the local retail workers or the Walmart employees. And in another scenario, they're catering to traveling nurses in Phoenix or whatever it happens to be. But like you guys as real estate investors and your audience, they're going to know, and they're going to have specific insights into their local markets. And the question for me as a business owner has always been, well, how do I add value to any of these relationships? And why would that owner use PadSplit versus doing this on their own?
Are you guys an education platform as well? And what I mean by that is I have so many questions behind the legality, parking, tenant issues. Like, do you guys do that on your website?
Yeah, so I mean, some of it's on the website. Some of it's just, I mean, it's changing and evolving a lot as well. But we do monthly host operator calls. I do a number of town halls personally, both on the host side and the member side. And there's a ton of information on the site that frankly needs to be cataloged a little bit better. We were excited. A host actually released a book earlier this year, and there are a number of hosts who are running their own classes around PadSplit for their specific strategy. So,
like somebody who's doing a webinar on February 27th at 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Right.
Yeah, and in fact, I have this program called First Deal. It's like firstdeal.com. People get their first deal. It's a fun little program I run. It's like I'm not like forcing PadSplit on people, but like, man, like I'm like if you're getting started in real estate, it's such a good way to get started. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of it. So I'm one of those guys just pushing it. Yeah. Anyway, I absolutely love it. But let's you hit the legality question. I mean, obviously,
I've got so many
Yeah,
questions. I could just shoot them like
you probably have more questions than me because I've gone through these conversations a ton of times now. But maybe we start with legality and then you just fire.
Legality, like how do you pass occupancy? Because when we have quite a few single family rentals, we get occupancy. They tell us you can have 6 people living here. And some of those are 3-bedroom houses.
Sure.
Like I guess that would work there. But how do you, or 3 of the same, or 6 of the same family? So there's, how do you pass the legality?
So I'm gonna pull up for a second and talk about zoning more broadly and some of those fundamental issues before we get into the specifics. Because a lot of people don't know this. Like, why is there a limit on the number of unrelated people in a particular zoning district? And all sorts of different reasons. All of them are discriminatory.
I was gonna say, I know there's redlining's a part of it.
So, no, it goes back to the original zoning from Los Angeles, and I think it was 1908. And when there was a case, I think it was Buchanan v. Worley in the 20s. It might have been, I can't remember if it was 1917 or 1927, but in any case, like, the zoning based on race became illegal.
Yeah.
Well, people who want to zone based on race are not stupid, and they tried to figure out other ways to exclude people that they didn't want in their neighborhoods, and that was one of the ways that they did it. Another one was some of these were based on brothel laws, but most people assume, oh well, it's because zoning wants to set up occupancy based on health and safety issues. Those are already regulated under residential code, fire code, etc.
Yeah.
Like, they're already there. And what's crazy is the definition of family is defined at a local level. Think about that for a second. So I'm in Atlanta. There are 83 different local jurisdictions in Atlanta, 83 different definitions of family, where it can change from 6 unrelated persons to no more than 2, just one side of the street to the other. Some of my favorite jurisdictions to pick on, there's one called Doraville in Atlanta that's no more than 2 unrelated people, but your grandparents and grandchildren aren't included in your family. So, like, if you're an intergenerational family, like, talk about discrimination.
Yeah.
Think about where that originated. It also happens to be a heavily minority area with lots of immigrants. Chesterfield County, same thing. Like, no more than 2 unrelated people, but as many domestic servants as you want can be included.
Yeah.
Even City of Atlanta is no more than 6 unrelateds plus 4 boarders occupying no more than 2 rooms plus as many domestic servants as you want. So, like, a lot of these laws go back a long, long time, and there are very clear U.S. constitutional issues with all of them. Now, how we thread this needle is the definition of a person is defined at a statewide level in 47 out of 50 states, excluding New York, Arkansas, and California. Why Arkansas? I don't know how they snuck in there, but that's where it's defined locally. And a corporation is typically included in the definition of person. So we create a special purpose entity that becomes the one person that you as a host are renting to. And our residents, one of the major reasons we refer to them as members, become actual members of that LLC. And that's the nature of the legal agreement. So,
and do you guys handle all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What
That's
about
wild.
What about parking?
Yeah.
You've got 7 people living in a house.
So we do a survey of our residents every year. And I know this year, I think it was 46%. It's usually between 46 and 48% own cars, which is a lot smaller than what most people think. I mean, they are relying on not even necessarily public transportation, but Uber and Lyft for their full-time transportation to get to work.
And I feel like that's only a problem for the next 3 years, and then that no longer becomes a problem. What I mean by that is, like, the cyber or the Tesla taxis and all that are coming. Like, I think 5 years from now, most of us won't own cars. I think it's gonna be that quick. I could be off by 5 years, but at least within 10. But I think within 5, majority of Uber. I mean, Uber is in massive trouble.
Yeah.
But majority of all Uber and Lyft will just be autonomous cars driving people around. And
could be, but yeah, I mean, if you figure, okay, 48% own cars, Well, I saw 4 cars parked outside this single family home.
Yeah.
Well, 8 bedrooms is 4 cars, so it's not a ton. I mean, for my houses that I own personally, I mean, I have a duplex that has 2 8 bedrooms, top and bottom, 1 parking spot. Now,
Wow.
it's really close to public transportation.
Yeah.
But it is not uncommon, especially in town areas, or if you're really close to services, where, think about it, I mean, somebody's making 35 grand a year.
Mhm.
Like, if they can get away without owning a car, I mean, heck, if I could get away without owning a car, I would. I've got 4 kids and carpool, which makes it harder. But
Yeah. Uber in the car.
but yeah, I mean, people don't
it's hard.
want to own cars if they can help it. And then if you're in a suburban, exurban area, we've seen hosts where they'll just put parking behind a house or just wider parking.
Yeah, if you're not renting to a
wider
family.
driveway.
Mhm.
I think if you're not renting to a full family, which you're not because you're renting by the bedroom, the backyard doesn't matter quite as much. And so if there's ways, like that's one thing when I'm looking now for a pad split, I always like to look like, oh, is there like that gate on the side of that? Or, is there like a little fence on the side of the house that leads to a backyard? Oh, that could make for really nice parking. That would be pretty easy to build.
Yeah.
I've been playing with that.
I can tell you what not a good solution is. We had a host who unpermitted paved over his front yard and put up like a privacy fence out front in a pretty nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
That raises some eyebrows. Don't do that.
So that's a question that I have is I've always considered PadSplit like Class A properties, buying a 5,000, 6,000 square foot house, converting it into 9, 10 bedrooms. But from what I hear from you, it's more in like, and I was thinking suburban. It's more urban areas.
Really just depends. I mean, it depends on the jurisdiction as well.
Okay.
I mean, I started buying houses in urban Atlanta.
Mhm.
So it's the market that I know the best and where I'm more comfortable investing. And we're buying lots and building new construction pad splits. But for a lot of people, yeah, it's naturally going to be more suburban. It depends on whatever the urban environment happens to be. But we've seen it work in all sorts of different locations, even really rural, small town, 12,000 people.
Really?
And it's been effective there. Like I say, it really just depends on the insights of that local investor and what their strategy happens to be.
Do you know I did rent by the room? That's how I got started.
No.
It's my very first, when I got into like a
Nice.
very first story of real estate. I mean, even before buying real estate, I rented a 4-bedroom apartment and then I rented out 3 of the bedrooms and I got to live, pretty cheap.
Sure.
And then I rented out the 4th bedroom and I moved into the living room and I lived on the couch for that year and I got to live for free. And that was like my first entrance. And then from there, I bought a house similar. It was like 07. But my first house was a 4-bedroom. I just immediately rented out 3 other bedrooms to 3 dudes and got to live for free again like that. And that gave me time to get the house fixed up. I then sold it, made money, and that's how I got into real estate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to get started. I was looking here. I don't know if is it Kupalani or Pukalani?
But there's Pukalani. Yeah.
Pukalani?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, okay, well, like Maui's ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
And, was it 14.5% home price appreciation last year?
Something like that. Yeah, it's been nuts. Cam just paid that for me. He just bought my house and paid 14% more. Nice.
The new sponsored podcast. But yeah, I was thinking like, what would I do here if I were starting off?
Yeah.
And I saw I could rent a 3-bedroom, 2,000 square foot place, pretty nice.
Yeah.
For $37.50 a month.
Yep, sounds about right.
Okay, well, if I can get an additional 3 bedrooms, converting dining room and living room.
Yep.
I've got 6 bedrooms, call it $1,500 a month, furnished with utilities.
Yep.
Now,
which is about what it is here. For a studio, furnished, $1,500 is pretty normal.
So now I'm grossing $9 grand a month.
Yeah.
I don't even need to own the house. It's better that I don't own the house, actually, in that particular case, unless I'm banking on 14% home price appreciation to continue into the future. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely like that strategy that you started off your career with still works in a lot of cases. And we have some hosts who just use an arbitrage model. And if you're in a really high cost area where like, that house was $1.2 million, well, it's going to be really difficult for most people to go get that mortgage, but it's not that hard to pay that $3,700 deposit and invest, I don't know, 20, 30 grand into converting the bedrooms and making it really nice.
Do you suggest, I've got so many questions, but do you suggest converting dining room, living room, everything to where there's not I guess, community space?
I always like a dining area.
Okay.
So, and there's some, I'd say, misinformation or rumors out there that like I am predisposed against community areas. Like that's not true. Everything that I do and that I think about in these places is just based on customer discovery. And if I were a person living there, what would I want? And the reality is, like, when I tour most of these houses, and I've done thousands of them at this point, people are in their rooms.
Really?
Right. And if you're working full time, I think about my own experience. When I rented a room in Atlanta in 2002, the guy cooked with garlic, right? Like all the time. And I would go home, I would shut my door, and my girlfriend and I would like hang out in the room. That was it.
Yeah.
And if you walk into most of these houses, like you can almost hear a pin drop, or you can hear televisions in their individual rooms, but there's just not a lot of things that are happening in those common areas. And if it makes a deal work or not, then yeah, I convert it. The other thing I think about is, okay, look at our posture right now. Okay, well, imagine we have a roommate who doesn't know us particularly well, and he walks in that door, and he sees us just hanging around, lounging on sofas. Like, it's a little bit awkward. Take that exact same scenario and now put us around a dining room table. It's a different feeling. It's a different interaction.
It's a really great point.
Right? And so furniture selection makes a big difference. One of the things I learned a long time ago from the first house in 2009 was bad things happen on sofas. So like, if somebody can lay down, yeah, it should be a t-shirt. Just trademark that for me.
Yeah, right there. Bad thing happen on sofas.
Yeah, I mean, if you can lay down on it, like probably not a good furniture choice for a shared dwelling. But I also think community happens organically in a lot of ways as well. And so we have most of these houses where, yeah, people are working often 12-hour shifts. They're working 2 jobs. What do they want in their home environment? They want safe, clean, quiet. And that's what they're looking for. And they're looking for another place to go. They have some goal that they're leveraging PadSplit to get towards. Our mission as a company is leveraging housing as a vehicle for financial empowerment.
Yeah.
And I know, because we do these surveys of residents every year, 94% of people ultimately want something else. Like, they want a place of their own. They want not necessarily to own a house always, but they want financial independence for themselves, right? They don't want to be living in a co-living environment for the rest of their lives, by and large. In 60% of cases, sure, they do. But in most cases, they want to use us to save money so that they can do whatever it is that they want to do with their lives, whether that's get healthier, eat better food, buy a car, move across the country, get a new job, go back to school, buy a home, etc. Start a business is another common one. And so it's just how do we build these environments to help them achieve their goals, whatever it happens to be. In some cases, it might be, yeah, I want to be on the Real World and like sit in a hot tub with a bunch of babes. Like, I don't know, but
done.
Yeah, that's not the house that like, those are not the ones I'm setting up. So yeah, it's to each their own, right? Whether you're a host picking your own strategy or whether you're a resident who's searching for something specific.
What can you walk me through, like, the average age? Let's call it age and gender, like just demographics of that. Like, who's renting these things? Are they college kids? Or are they
you mentioned students earlier. Only 3% of our residents are students.
Really?
Wow.
So really rare.
Yeah.
80% are employed, 20% are on fixed income. 36 is the average age, so a lot older than what most people think.
Yeah.
One of my PadSplits is 55 plus, and I'm not the only one. Yeah, there are a number, and particularly as the boomer generation ages and are looking for alternatives to like assisted living or any independent living facility, like this is far cheaper, better option.
Yeah. We're looking at assisted living. Like, we're actually looking at, like, building them and owning them, and you're $8,000 a bedroom.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, exactly.
like, a month, that's a very different than a couple $100 a week.
Sure.
Which I'd love to come back to the weekly thing too, but keep going on that. So yeah, that's
so
definitely older than I would assume.
Average, yeah, and then average income is like $35,000 a year. Median income is $27,600 a year.
Yeah.
And so you think about there was a big push years ago, as you remember, for $15 minimum wage. Well, $15 an hour minimum wage, which is not the minimum wage in most places, is only $31,200 a year.
Wow.
Well,
That's wild.
that's a full-time gig, 15
Yeah.
bucks an hour. And then it's kind of mind-blowing that, oh gosh, what does $31,200 a year qualify you for an apartment? And then you start to conceptualize, holy cow, there are a ridiculous number of people who have this need for this type of option. And why I have always gravitated towards the more affordable segment is the pyramid is widest at the bottom.
Yeah.
And the first human need is shelter, right? It's the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so when I was walking around like a penguin after my first son was born in 2007, I was broke. I had, I think maybe I had 10 grand and then 10 grand that I earned for the year and maybe 10 grand in savings. So I guess broke is relative. But yeah, I mean, I was terrified of what I was going to do. And I thought, if I can create a business and a cash flow stream that is providing the lowest cost housing available, and I can make a profit off of that, I will always have a business. I will always have a business. It doesn't matter if the market is high or low. And I look at us as an entity. So I founded the company in 2017. We really got started in 2018 with our first third-party host, and when we finished a program called TechStars. So that's probably
I didn't know you did TechStars. That's cool.
Yeah. But that was like the real kind of start of the business. We finished 2018 with 53 units. We now have over 16,500, almost 17,000, I think. But along that journey, there was a real question of just like how do you make this thing go? And we've seen from 2018 to today, okay, well, COVID, right? Like we're a co-living business. And people thought, oh man, nobody's ever going to want to share a home.
Oh, that had to be so
COVID.
scary when COVID hit for you guys.
It was and it wasn't. Like, because I still had that same mentality of, and I knew our customers, and if you're making 30 grand a year, what are your choices?
Yeah.
And so what you saw instead was a lot of the higher end co-living companies saw huge dips in occupancy because those people had choices, right? They were choosing for the swanky place in Brooklyn maybe, but they could just go live in Hoboken, New Jersey and get a place to themselves. And so they did. Or they could go back to their parents. So they did. And for our people, like, there's a reason that they are where they are. And there just weren't as many choices. And so we were stable through that. We were stable through the interest rate spikes, everything.
This was exactly, by the way, this is exactly my argument. The number one argument I have for why I like mobile home parks. Like, I have got 6,000 or 7,000 now mobile home units around the country. And I love them because it's like the people that are paying $3,500 for that nice swanky, whatever on the beach, they're going to I'm going to tighten up and go to 2,500. The 2,500 people go to the 2,000, 2,000, 1,500. And it just keeps going down, but you don't get less. I mean, yeah, you do actually. Mobile home parks were the lowest until I discovered PadSplit. Yeah. Now that might be on that rung, but it's the same argument. It's
they're very similar.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in America, a ridiculous number of people that are not being served. Nobody's building affordable housing in America right now. Yeah, I mean, that's my,
You can't.
It's not financially viable, and there's no government help there. All the building is at the top of the market. Like, they're all building the A-class stuff. And so what do we do with this 50% of Americans? And it's not getting better. That's what the fascinating thing is. Yeah. It's not getting better. All the talk about affordable housing, it's not getting better. And so I look at this as a huge solution. And the other thing I like on that note, where different, we talked about legalities, and they're definitely, and I want to maybe even go back to that and how do we, whatever. But let's say Airbnb, if I had to choose between Airbnb and PadSplit, I would choose PadSplit because the entire world is moving in favor of what you're doing, and it's moving against Airbnb. Like, no politician's like, we need less affordable housing. Right. What are they saying? They're saying we need to get these vacation rentals out of here because they're driving up the price of houses. No one's saying that about. So yes, there's challenges and neighbors. I don't like the person parking too many cars. We get those, obviously. But in terms of macro trends, or the metaphor I use all the time is like when you're paddling in the ocean trying to get whales, like trying to get in front of, getting a whale, you don't paddle to where the whale is, you paddle to where the whale is going.
It's going to be, yeah.
So yeah, PadSplit is in the way of a massive trend, and that's why I'm just like a huge cheerleader for you guys.
Thanks, man. Yeah. No, I mean, to build off that point, I mean, as we get traction in a market, right? And you think about who lives in PadSplit units, people who work at City Hall, school teachers, or people, the cafeteria lady, anybody who works for TSA, like anyone who works at an airport, not just TSA, but anyone who works at an airport outside of the pilot. Everybody, right? So the challenge that I have when I'm talking to a public official or policymakers, do you believe that the people who serve your community deserve an opportunity to live there? Right? And any elected official who answers that question no is probably going to have a primary challenge. But even more importantly and practically, let's assume we get to a point where we've got several thousand units in a given market. And you've got some crazy politician who says, all right, I'm going to give you guys a cease and desist, or they just decide to throw the book at us legally. And now we fought a lot of those cases, and we win those cases because there are all these constitutional issues. But like, let's just assume that by some act of Congress, they were able to say, hey, PadSplit, we're shutting you down. Well, now all of a sudden, you have thousands of people who cannot access traditional housing options, who work and are the lifeblood of this particular city, that are now under eviction. Like, and then what? Like, what? I mean, it's a disaster. Where the rubber meets the road is, I just don't foresee that happening, and I would be happy to be regulated by any jurisdiction. And I know the majority of our owners would say, look, if we could pay an annual fee for regulatory certainty, overwhelmingly, they would do it. And then it's just a question of, when do the public officials realize, wait, we have neither the money nor the time to solve this problem in the traditional ways, and we have assets that are sitting there unused that don't cost us anything. At this stage of the game, with the number of units we've created, we've saved taxpayers over $4 billion. And we're not that big a company. But when a housing unit, I don't know what it is here in Hawaii, but in Atlanta, it's around $250,000 easily now per apartment unit for an affordable unit. In California, it's $500,000 to $1 million.
That's probably similar here.
Per apartment. Well, versus a PadSplit unit that costs you $0. And there was a fantastic study. There have been two of them looking at census data about how many empty bedrooms are available. Well, there was an apartment list economist a year ago who found that there were 137 million spare bedrooms in the United States. And even after you accounted for all the people who were unhoused or underhoused, there was 113 million left over, versus the largest estimate that I've ever seen on the housing shortage is 7.3 million units. Okay. So 113 million that are empty. Like, you could use them right now, versus 7.3, not even close. And then even Realtor just did another analysis in the New York Times, I think last week or the week before. Well, they assume that, okay, well, we're in a post-COVID world, so some of those extra bedrooms are used for home offices or storage. And I don't know why they can't just get a storage unit, but like, be that as it may, even after you account for extra bedrooms for home offices and storage, it's still 32 million bedrooms that are extra and empty. So you can, like,
we have room for people.
Yeah, exactly. And we have more square footage per person in the U.S. today than we've ever had in U.S. history. So when people think about the housing crisis, or it's a shortage of supply, it's not really a shortage of supply. It's that we use space much less efficiently as a society now than we have ever done so. And if we were as efficient today as we were in 1950, for instance, when the average square footage per person was 298 square feet, and people were living in 900 square foot homes with 2 or 3 kids, like, no problem whatsoever. Like, you're done. There is no housing shortage.
Are you seeing people using PadSplit for, like, in multifamily at all? Like, is that happening?
Absolutely.
So I've got some, I want to talk, maybe we can talk about this later, but like after we're done recording, but I'll give you the specifics. But like, I've got some apartments, especially down in Texas, where our taxes have just gone through the roof. Just insane right now. It's like these things were cash flowing, and then taxes and insurance both just went up. And now these cash flowing properties are now not cash flowing. And that's a real problem. We got investors. I'm trying to, like, so I'm actually legit looking at saying, what if I took a 200 unit apartment complex? And I look at I'm like playing with the layouts of them. I'm like, okay, we don't need the living room. Now we can have 4 bedrooms where we're having 2. And we're in like great areas. For example, I got 2 in Austin, amazing locations right near downtown, within walking distance. One of them is of like of downtown. I mean, it's great locations. Average rent in Austin is, for a studio is $2,000 a month. So I'm like, could I turn an entire complex? That's something that would be wild. A whole complex of, whatever, a couple hundred units, all into pad splits. And I think I would double my NOI.
Yeah, I think you could.
I would love to try.
I wouldn't put all.
Yeah. I would do it all at one time. Exactly. I think I'd have to build into it for years, but
I mean, there is still supply demand on the rental side as well. But yeah, I mean, I think you could. I mean, we've seen people who've converted motels even where there's not even the bump in cash flow because it's 1 unit to 1 unit, right? But just because of the things I touched on earlier for vacancy loss, turn costs, and speed to fill. Our median time to refill a room right now across all markets is 7 days.
Wow.
That's
so
crazy.
Yeah, it can be really, really fast. And one of the benefits of all utilities included, fully furnished, is it means that usually those turn costs are lower, which is kind of strange. Most people wouldn't necessarily assume that, especially in a shared living situation. Yeah. You assume, oh gosh, like it must be so much work and so much maintenance costs. Over the long haul, it's actually less.
Yeah.
But you can get people in really, really quickly.
With that, like, do you guys have or suggest, we were talking to some guy a while back and he was like, they have house rules where this person takes out the trash, this person cuts the grass. Do you guys suggest that, or is it like just pay somebody to do everything, a maintenance person or something like that to cut the grass, take out the trash, so then you don't have to rely on any of your tenants to do that?
It depends on the host, right? I mean, we have standard rules that are for every pad split.
Yeah.
Like no smoking, for instance. I don't know, maybe if somebody were owner occupant and they really wanted a smoking house, they might let it go.
But
the
smoking house. Yeah.
I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah.
So we start off with standard rules, and then every host can customize their own rules.
Gotcha.
We actually have a chores tracker. Not a lot of people use it, but they could. I clean all of my pad splits, and I think most hosts clean them twice a month. To just send a cleaner out for common areas, which is another benefit of co-living specifically relative to apartments or long-term rentals, and why I believe our loss runs for insurance purposes are so much lower than what I had seen as a long-term rental or even multifamily rental owner is in an apartment or a long-term single-family rental. My visibility ends at the front door, right? And particularly if you've got somebody you filed eviction on, like you're not getting in that house unless it's some major emergency and the house is flooding. Well, now all of a sudden I have visibility 24/7, 365 inside that home, right? And I'm sending cleaners out, I'm sending maintenance people out. I may be going out personally, and your ability to intervene early is so much greater, and just your risk mitigation generally is a lot lower because let's say I've got 6 people in a house. And I usually like to keep the number between 6 and 8. That's where I feel like is kind of the magic number. I'm sure there are hosts out there that would disagree with me, but that's usually the number that I target. And if I've got one bad actor in a 6 or 8 person house, that means that I have 5 or 7 other people that are always there kind of monitoring and usually reporting if something's going on, right? And they can rate and review each other. They have a messenger app where they can always message the host or property manager directly. And then I'm sending people out at least twice a month to see what's going on.
Yeah, that's super, super valuable. Because like when I get a house, I mean, you too, Cam, I'm sure we have a rental house. We rent it out for somebody for 3 years. You get in there and it is $20,000 of work to fix that thing back up again.
Yeah.
But because you're going in every 2 weeks, you're not getting that damage.
It never happens.
Yeah. And so like at the end of the day, you have a bedroom. Oh, they whatever on the carpet. Like, okay, fine. We ripped the carpet out of that bedroom, but we can deal with that. So
no carpet.
Yeah.
No carpet.
No carpet. Exactly. Yeah. Don't have the carpet.
Yeah.
And there's such like I call them tenant-proof materials.
Sure.
That like, or you can call them kid-proof, but like tenant-proof, like they're not going to damage it as well. Like flooring
LPT
today.
Flooring,
yeah, exactly.
Amazing,
flooring,
much better.
Yeah, waterproof and like they have such, and it looks good and feels good. So yeah.
I do have a question.
I got a lot too.
You talked about evictions earlier. So so Brandon, we talked about him earlier being scary and threatening.
I am.
He's living in one of this houses with 8 other people. and everybody hates him and is scared of him. And
It's the
you
beard,
try
man.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's
It's
the
a
beard.
scary beard.
you try and get him out of there, and he refuses. Can you get him out really quick, or do you have to go through the eviction process, or is he stuck there and then all of your other tenants move out because
Yeah,
they don't want to live around him?
Great question. I mean, like today, I always default to landlord tenant.
Okay.
Right. I mean, different jurisdictions, different rules. Like full disclosure, get an attorney.
Yeah. They don't kick down
I
their
was only
door.
named after an attorney. Don't take my word for it. This is not legal advice. Yada yada. But yeah, I mean, I always default to assume landlord tenant.
Gotcha.
Right, because even in the cases where it's not landlord tenant and somebody calls the police and the police show up, guess who doesn't study landlord tenant law or like whatever the state laws happen to be? That police officer who's showing up. And as a general rule, I try to avoid getting put in handcuffs.
Yeah.
And
It's good life policy. Another t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another t-shirt.
Yeah.
So I would assume landlord tenant.
Mhm.
In most cases, though, the other people who are living in your home are also there for a reason, and they deal with it. I mean, for better or worse, if you're providing value for those individuals in their home, they don't usually want to leave. And I mean, I've seen it the other way where somebody's just a terror, and like very, very rare that's happened. I can think of only maybe 2 or 3 cases in our history where somebody was bad enough where everybody's like, I'm just getting out of here.
Wow.
But super, super rare versus the example you brought up where like, even if you had a quote unquote good tenant that's been there 3-4 years, you're still talking easily, 5 figures worth of damage.
Yeah.
I mean, the first PadSplit prototype was that situation. She was there 4 years, and I had a $46,000 insurance claim on that house.
Oh, wow.
And that's why I converted it. It was like, all right, time to go. We're going to run this one as the first PadSplit prototype in 2017. Was exactly that scenario. And as I think about my own houses, the first one that I started in 2009, I have never turned that house to this day. Like to this day, have never had to go back and re-renovate that house. Now we did have carpet, we replaced the carpet at some point, but yeah, over the long haul. If you think about like your operating maintenance costs plus your capex, like your operating maintenance costs are a little bit higher, but it's all of that preventative maintenance that you should be doing already, but probably aren't because out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But yeah, your capex basically goes away in most of these houses. And again, I've been doing this for 16 years now, and like I can show you multiple P&Ls going back over a decade. And that's one of the major hidden benefits of co-living that nobody really talks about. Everybody thinks about cash flow.
Yeah.
But I mean, between vacancy loss and turn costs, like that's easily 20%.
Yeah. I agree. It's massive amount.
Yeah.
People, I wrote a blog post years ago called like the silent but I think it was called the silent but deadly killer to your cash flow.
Yeah.
The silent but deadly killer, and it was a vacancy turn costs.
Yeah,
like it can be thousands of dollars, and there goes all your cash flow, and you're like, why am I not making money after 5 years of owning a rental property? It's because every 2 years you turn it over and lose 10 grand.
Sure,
it's a very real problem, especially. Maybe this was the wrong thing to say, but like especially when I dealt with the lowest income people, like when my first rental, like the one with the rent by the room stuff, like our average income was probably 19,000 in that town. Like it was real low income, and for whatever reason they just did a lot of damage. It was just a very high. Every one of my houses was just destroyed. But yeah, getting in there all the time. Oh, I love it. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Bedrooms, bathroom count. Like, is there a number of bathrooms I'm assuming 8 people shouldn't share one bathroom. So how do you?
Correct.
How do
4
you
to 1
work
max.
What is it?
4 to 1 max.
Okay,
So you never really want more than 4 bedrooms sharing one bathroom. Okay. So that's a requirement for the platform. I would veer more to 3 to 1 in most cases, and probably 4-ish people to 1 bathroom. But in most cases, you're always going to be better off if you have the ability to put in a private bathroom. That investment's going to pay off.
Yeah,
and I mean the increase in revenue, private bathroom all day, every day, like wherever you can, and then maybe a couple of shared baths just to like create a unit blend on pricing.
So the house I just bought down in Florida, I bought it. I chose Florida because I wanted somewhere that I could take. It's for my son Wilder. So I have a strategy. I did it for my daughter. Now I'm doing it for my son, and I'll do it for my third son soon, or my third kid. But basically, I buy them a property and put it on a 15-year mortgage when they're young, and that way it's paid off by the time they go to college, and they can refinance it, pays for their whole college, right? Just easy. So I did that with my daughter. It was awesome. In fact, it's already worth $500,000. We only owe like $100,000 on it, so it's already covered her.
Saying this publicly?
I know, yeah.
Hopefully they don't listen.
I've told this story so much, so people know this is like the rosy fourplex. But this time I thought for Wilder, I'm going to do, because it's hard to find cash flow right now. It's really tough.
Yeah.
But PadSplit works. So I said, okay, I'm going to buy a PadSplit for Wilder. I found this house. I used an agent buddy of mine. Shout out to Michael Mutz. He helped me find this property. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, single story. It's like 2,600 square foot, something like that. So I'm like, that's a pretty good square footage for 4 bedrooms. So we look at the layout. The living room was 25 by 30 or something. I mean, just a massive living room, right?
Yeah.
Into the dining room and kitchen. And then one of the bedrooms was 20 feet by 12, good sized bedroom. So anyway, so we went over there, and I didn't do this. Michael did it, and he did a video walkthrough, but put blue tape on the ground. Like, here's where we could put some walls. We are getting rid of the living room. That becomes 2 bedrooms. The huge bedroom that was 20 by 12 is now 2 10 by 12s. We're working it a little bit. We're going to end up with 9 bedrooms out of this when we're done. 9 bedroom, 3 bath. So my question for you, first of all, do you have any tips on these walls? What does that mean to add walls? Are we talking full on 2x4 plywood? I mean, 2x4 and then drywall on both sides. Are people running electrical in those things, or are they just temporary? How does that work? I guess
it depends on the house, depends on the local code. I mean, in some cases they're doing like pressure walls where literally there's no method of affixing the temporary wall to the structure.
Okay,
and that's how you can not necessarily qualify for permits in those cases.
Interesting, yeah.
In a lot of cases, they're putting in electrical, they're doing real wall construction. I would say always check your code, see if you need permits. You were talking about legality earlier. Like, we have no defense if you didn't get your building permits and they were required.
Yeah.
Like, there's no constitutional protection for not getting your permits, people. Just get your permits whenever in doubt.
Yes.
Or understand that like you are taking a very serious risk if you do that, and like PadSplit cannot protect you if you have taken that risk, because I'm not going to know. Like in your lease with PadSplit, it says you've gotten all necessary permits and you're signing off on that. But yeah, I mean, in most cases, they're getting permits and they're building the walls. Yeah. But I mean, sometimes you want them convertible too, right? So not even necessarily walls. One of the things I'll point out is think about, as a landlord, your formal dining room. Like, that's maybe the easiest. Formal dining room or home office, where you're putting doors.
Yeah.
Literally, you're putting doors and you're changing the furniture. Okay, well, 99 times out of 100, that's not going to require a permit.
Yep.
And all you're doing is changing that dining room table and chandelier to a ceiling fan and a bed, and then putting a door, or maybe even a double door on a 5.0 cased opening. Like, that's super easy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can make those changes really, really quickly and take that room that previously generated $0 in revenue and now is worth at least several $100 a month in NOI.
This has become a game to me a little bit when I search like Zillow or Realtor. I go in there and I'm like looking at these houses and I'm like, okay, oh yeah, that one right there, that's a bedroom. That one right there. It becomes actually kind of fun to see how many can I get in this. And I look for like higher square footage, obviously, because I can get more potential. Is there any rules of thumb around that? Like, what should people look for if they want to do one?
Yeah, I mean, take the square footage, divide by 250 or 300 is like a pretty good rule of thumb. The one thing I will tell everybody listening is that extra bedroom looks really attractive on a spreadsheet. and when you get out there, like, always think about customer experience first.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about the arrangement of furniture. Think about how it's going to feel when you're in that room, or when you're putting in your aunt or your cousin or your mom or grandma. Like, what's going to be their experience living in that home? And even though that 9th or 10th bedroom may look great on a pro forma, and it does, it's just not. It's not going to be a great experience, and it's, I don't know, 8 by 10, which is the minimum to be on the platform.
I was going to ask that too, is how small is too small?
8 by 10, but listen, people like at least double beds, if not queens or kings. And and you need to make sure you have egress windows for every bedroom. But yeah, not all bedrooms are created equal, for sure. And if it's a nicer place to live, people are going to stay there longer, and you're going to get paid more as a result.
If somebody's listening to this, or just me, and you're like, I'm like, hey, I want to go find a PadSplit. What would be the first? Like, I've kind of looked at. I invest in St. Louis, and I've looked there, and our average rent's probably around $1,800 to $2,000. Those are typically 3-bed, 2 baths.
Yep.
But you can get in a studio there for $800 a month.
Yep.
And I don't think it works. I could be wrong, because I could turn those into 4 or 5 bedrooms, all of those. Like, where would you say, like, to start looking?
Yeah. Like location.
Yeah, I mean, in a market like that, where barriers to entry are certainly lower, I would actually look at those studio apartments. Like, go out there and understand. Put yourself in the shoes of the customer who you think you're targeting, right? Whether it is whatever the St. Louis airport happens to be, or what are the retail workers earning. Like, go through the very base level. Go to Indeed, for instance, and figure out, okay, what is this person earning?
Yeah.
Right. And if the predominant wage is $9 an hour in St. Louis, well, then $800 isn't really that affordable.
Yeah.
If the predominant wage is 17, 18, then all of a sudden it becomes much more attainable. If they're requiring 2 months deposit, or if they're requiring no deposit and it's only $200, like, all those things really make a difference. And so it's not as easy as, oh, this is a low cost market, therefore it works or doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you got to understand the market and do your research. So where I like to start is, okay, if I go to Indeed and I see what these types of roles are hiring, security guard, teaching assistant, daycare worker, like what's a retail worker earning? And then I assume, okay, I'm this person, I'm looking for housing in this market. And so I go to apartments.com or Zillow, and I will call those places and see, okay, what are the barriers to entry for these places, and what am I going to qualify for? Are they looking at a 3-to-1 income to rent ratio? And looking at those two things, you can start to get a sense for the market and see, all right, like, either I think there's a realistic opportunity here, or this market is just overhoused and there's not really a barrier to entry. And so it's probably not a great market to invest in. But I mean, that could be, again, a village of 12,000 people, or it could be a major metropolis. It really just depends. But that's where I would start.
Yeah.
And then just do the math for pro forma on the property that you're buying.
One thing that you've said that I've never thought about is the barrier to entry on the security deposit. I've always thought about it in terms of price, but there's a lot of people that don't have first and last month for $3,000, $4,000 security deposit. So do you find the rent, like the weekly payments, is that something that people love and need, or give me the thought behind that?
I want to know the weekly thing too.
Yeah. So first, we were talking about high-end co-living earlier. So when there was a big company called Common that raised way more venture capital than we did, it was like the darling of the co-living industry for years. They filed bankruptcy. We found out their collections rate was less than 90%, like significantly less than ours. So high-end customer, lower collections rate.
Interesting.
Our collections rate, if you took your billable dues, put them in a pro forma, like, what could you expect to collect? We call that our effective collections rate. It's never dropped below 97.5% in our history. Okay, we're talking about people with median income $27,000 a year.
Wow. Dude, that's incredible.
And we're not looking at credit. Well, why is that possible? Right? Here's why. Okay, let's see. Today is the 21st. What day of the week is February 1st?
Payday.
What day of the week is March 1st? Like, nobody knows. Okay.
I have no idea.
Audience, without looking at your phones, like, what's the day of the week of the next month or the one after? Nobody knows. Right? Well, I'm on Hawaii time, but I'm still sure today's Tuesday.
Yep.
And that's why. Like, that is exactly why. I had an experience when I was running these properties. Our office was inside one of our apartment complexes, and I watched this woman come in, and she had paid her cable television bill on the 13th, and so she couldn't make her rent payment. And I thought, It's so crazy. Like, why would anybody ever prioritize their cable television over their rent? And then I got to talking to her, and you realize it's not that she prioritized her cable television first. People aren't stupid, but they're humans. And the collections agent was calling her, and her cousin or sister-in-law or somebody was supposed to pay her back. And so she just assumed that she was going to get the money in time. And if she hadn't made that decision, she wouldn't have ended up under eviction. But like every property manager in the country sets their rent to the 1st or the 5th of the month, which has nothing to do, no correlation with that payday. And yet, okay, my tenants are probably living paycheck to paycheck. I would think the majority of property managers assume, certainly in Class BC, like assume that their people are stretched for cash.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then on top of picking this arbitrary day that none of us actually know for the billing date, I'm also going to say, and your electricity bill, that's on you. And that's going to be on a different date.
Yep.
And I'm not going to furnish the place. So if you have to go get a loan for furniture, like that's on you. And then like water bill, gas bill, keep going on and on. All these things are on different dates. So you got like 6 different bills. They're all on different dates. No kidding that people have a really difficult time budgeting.
Yep.
Whereas if I say, all right, you have one payment and it includes your furniture, your rent, your Wi-Fi, your utilities. We report all on-time payments to credit bureaus through our partner at Isuzu.
Oh, that's cool.
We provide access to telemedicine. And I say, okay, you have one payment. It's due every Friday. Guess what? Like, shocker.
Yeah.
People make that payment.
Yeah.
Because they are incentivized and motivated to keep their shelter. Again, it's bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, they make that payment. And if I say, okay, well, maybe you get paid every second Tuesday. So let's go ahead and set your payment to every second Tuesday so then you know the money's in the bank.
Mm.
That's it. I mean, it is just customer discovery. And
that's cool.
Lo and behold, like,
we used to find
easier to collect.
I'm sure you find this too, but we used to find a very common problem. Like when I was like physically managing my properties and I was doing all the work myself, like what happens is because of the days of the week, or like the every other week they get paid doesn't line up because the month has more than 4 weeks in it, right? So there's always a few extra days. Well, over time that builds up. So eventually, now in my mind, it's like, oh, every once in a while you have an extra paycheck that should help them. It doesn't. What they do is they spend that on something because like, oh, I have a paycheck. My next one doesn't come till the 9th though of the next month. But they start looking ahead. So they robbed from this one that came 2 weeks before the 9th, so the 27th. Instead of saving that one for rent, they spend it on something else. Now they don't have it. And now they eventually catch up, but now they got $100 on late fees and they got all the drama. And then it starts over. Every 6 months, same thing happens.
Or tax refunds.
Yeah, or tax refunds.
Nobody pays that January 1st payment. And you're like, just let me wait until my tax refund.
Yeah. That would actually, I used to love tax time because that's whenever we would catch up. Like if they were behind, dude, hopefully they get a bunch of tax money. But yeah, I love the weekly thing because you're not relying on them to be good at budgeting, which I'm terrible at budgeting.
Sure.
And I went to school for this stuff and I have been doing it for 20 years and I still am terrible at budgeting. So why do I expect other people to be good at it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a privilege that I get to put everything on autopay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, I'd be in trouble.
I'd be in big trouble. I still can't. Yeah. Anything that's not autopaid is it's not getting done. It's just going to be a mess. So I think that's amazing. TVs. Do you put a TV in every room? Do they supply their own TV?
Different hosts, different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not required.
So I do not. I have not done that historically. Okay. I know a lot of hosts who swear by it. It was funny. We had a host in Houston yesterday on our Facebook page who said, "Hey, tip, you can fit 20 43-inch televisions in the back of a Ford Maverick truck." Because he puts televisions in every room. And I mean, the gist is, look, we're investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so is the room rate that you can charge a good return on investment for putting a television in the room or a mini fridge in the room? And the reason, like philosophically, why I always thought owners should include the utilities is because guess what? Now I'm motivated and incentivized to include high efficiency appliances and energy efficiency infrastructure. And I actually reap the benefits of that because it's included. And so I will make those investments. Whereas if I'm not including the utilities, then I'm going to put in incandescent bulbs and just whatever the cheapest thing I can get is. And so a lot of owners have figured out, oh, okay, well, if I put TVs in the rooms or other amenities, then I can bill an extra $10 a week. Well, $10 a week on a $140 television, that's a pretty good return.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of owners make those decisions. I haven't done it, but not for any great reason other than just, it's the way we've operated.
You know, when you go to like a Marriott hotel and you go into your room, maybe it's because I have like the Marriott, like whatever, I'm like part of their reward system or whatever. But I walk in the room and like on the TV, I turn the TV on and oftentimes it'll say like, hello, Brandon Turner, welcome to the Marriott or whatever, right? So different high-end hotels have this. Here's my idea, unsolicited idea for PadSplit, is you get every PadSplit with a TV that you guys run the software on. And so when they come in, it's like, welcome to the person, whatever. And this may be illegal, but if you ever do have a problem with a bad tenant, you just turn their TV off.
You are more on the money than you know, Brandon.
People would not want to stay where they can't have a TV.
You are absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, and it's like I've heard. I don't know if it's actually come to fruition, but I've heard people counting Wi-Fi as a utility that you're not allowed to legally turn off.
I'd be curious from a legal side, is Wi-Fi accounted on that?
Yeah, really. I think it depends on the jurisdiction, but yeah, you shut off somebody's Wi-Fi or like cut access to Wi-Fi, they're not happy.
Yeah,
and often exit early.
Yeah, so if you could shut off Wi-Fi on somebody and you have the TVs programmed, whether you have TV or not, but you just shut off Wi-Fi. You just got to give a different password to the rest of the people in the room. Like, hey, we changed the password. Don't give this to John.
Yeah, I think that has definitely happened at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I'm sure they will at some point, if it hasn't been yet, they will call internet a right and like your right to internet. They'll probably call that. But right now, it's probably still Wild West. So
yeah,
I know people like in Texas that still like go and take out the windows and doors on their rentals to evict somebody. Like that's still like some places are Wild West and they just do what they want to do and they don't get caught. Another idea, if you're paying for the electricity, which you would be, we just did this event at the 50, right? So I have a group called the 50. It's like a bunch of like high-end real estate investors get together every quarter. But we had this guy show up. We randomly met at the pool at the hotel we were doing this thing on. And we hit it off with him. He was awesome. But I found out he was a solar guy. Like he's a real estate investor, does solar. So we get him, he comes and speaks to everybody. Like the stuff he talked about, the how to utilize solar credits, probably paid for everybody's entire year for the 50 just if they implement what he talked about. But that is an interesting play for this because if you're paying electricity anyway, now you just factor in the cost of solar and then get the huge 30% federal rebate and then whatever state rebates you get. I think that's a super interesting play.
I'd love to talk to him because I've tried to figure out a way to actually. I know that solar prices have been coming down and it should make sense, but every time I get a solar quote, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way it costs as much. Like,
I think the key
your margin's got to be 70%.
Yeah, he built his own solar company, I think largely so he could use it on his own properties and get it at cost, which the margins are massive for solar companies. Like they just charge a ridiculous amount. So if you can get it in-house, get it wholesale cost, that's a whole nother business I don't need, but I'm probably going to start sometime because I'm just like that.
No, love it.
All right. We got a few more questions and we probably should move towards the end. We could talk about this stuff forever. I got one last one and I'll let you take one last one, then we'll move towards the next segment. I'm now going to be a long distance PadSplit owner as I just bought that first property. Second one's coming online soon. What advice do you have for me? How can I make this thing run well? I'm also a busy guy. I don't have a lot of time. So what should I do? What should I look for?
So I have never been a long distance investor personally. Where I've seen it work well for out-of-state investors is they find somebody local who they can trust. Right. And I told you guys earlier, our company's fully remote, fully distributed. I have a pretty straightforward rule is I want to hire people or work with people who are capable of making independent judgment decisions that I can trust, right? Same thing.
That's so hard to find, but so valuable.
And so whether it is a maintenance technician or a property manager, or if you get really, really lucky, sometimes it's a resident of the house, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, or at least recommend relying on that. But yeah, you want to know that somebody's capable of making independent judgment decisions. One of our account execs is a long distance owner, and he's got 3 that he self manages and does really, really well. I've seen people do it extremely well. I've seen people do it poorly. Right. And listen, I mean, it's an investment. You just need to keep your eyes on it however you can, or make sure that you're continuing to replicate that member experience inside the home that you want, so that when somebody shows up and they walk in the door, the house feels the way that you expect it to feel. And whatever you need to do to have confidence that that's going to happen and that there's not going to be trash everywhere, right? But a lot of times that is just a really effective maintenance team or kind of like maintenance plus. Again, like a maintenance team that is capable of making judgment decisions, or like a cleaner who's capable of making judgment decisions, who knows that looks right, that definitely doesn't, right?
Yeah.
That looks good, that doesn't. And just somebody's eyes who you're capable of trusting.
Go ahead.
Nope.
Okay, I said last one, but where are you guys predominantly located in? Like, is there all 50 states or certain ones? I know you're heavy in Atlanta for sure. Where are you focused? Where are you moving?
Yeah,
to?
so we've expanded kind of outward from Atlanta. That's our biggest market, but we're launching Denver and LA right now.
Which didn't Denver just pass a law that says like you got rid of all that?
Colorado. Yeah, Colorado did.
Yeah.
Statewide, they removed all of those discriminatory occupancy restrictions.
See, that's why I think that's going to happen. It's going to be like dominoes falling. But
I think so too. Yeah, I don't know the timeline, but it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And the way they wrote that law specifically says that you can't, as a local jurisdiction, write occupancy restrictions that are based on family status. And that has to be on health, safety, and fire code.
Yeah.
You're like, oh wait, that's not what we already had.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense, and it shouldn't really be political. But we go today as far north as Philadelphia for a core market, all the way down to Miami, and then west to LA right now. We actually because of the LA fires, ran a special there for any host that wants to come on board. We're waiving all fees for the next 60 days. Just trying to figure out, look, I know that there are literally over 1 million empty bedrooms right now in Los Angeles.
Jeez,
and if you've got 180,000, I don't know what the number is now because things have settled a little bit, but 180,000 evacuees, this just makes sense.
Yeah.
So question for you on the financing aspect, because I think most of our listeners are probably beginner real estate investors, or maybe have 5 or 10, and probably a lot of them don't have, let's say, 20% to put down on a $500,000 house, then $50,000 to rehab it. How are most of your clients financing a house?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so most of them are doing hard money loans and then DSCR financing.
Okay.
On not necessarily cash out refi, but some sort of refinance after.
And there are loan products out there that will look at
Was that a softball to me?
No,
we'll do that at Better Life. BetterLifeRef.com. We actually specialize in PadSplit type properties.
No seasoning period?
No seasoning period, I believe. It's pretty quick because it's DSCR, which is a little Wild West in a good way, and good rates. I literally just I think I closed today. I mean, I'm literally waiting for the text I closed on my second PadSplit in a 2-week period using Better Life Ref. And
nice.
Anyway,
talk about trend lines though. So FHA just released a mortgagee letter last week or 2 weeks ago that accounts for up to 30% of income on an FHA loan from boarder income inside the home. Now today it's only on a refi, but like the fact that they released that at all, I think is really interesting and likely a sign of kind of where the market is headed.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Very cool. All right, man, I got a million more questions, but we'll have to do them at dinner. But let's move on to the next segment of the show. We call it the 3-2-1 pivot. So this is the idea your life's going one direction and something gets in its way and makes it pivot in a more positive direction. So we'll start with 3 books that have changed the direction of your life.
Yeah. So first one is probably pretty obvious, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, yeah.
My namesake that I've kind of come back to a number of times in my life when I've been wondering what I'm going to do or what I should do. And just a reminder to always kind of walk in the shoes of others and really try to take the perspective of whether it's a customer or just someone else. Second one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Gosh, I probably read that book 5 years ago. And this idea of habit stacking has really been huge in my life. Like I was not a runner. Okay, well now I'm a runner. I journal every day. And just the idea of taking these little incremental changes and implementing them on a daily basis and thinking about not just what you do, but who you are.
Yeah.
Right. Not that I run, but I am a runner. And so that's been really powerful. And then the third one, I could go a couple different ways here, but I'll say Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
I've not read that, but it's always been, it's like literally on my list of like my Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
Been there for like 6 years.
Yeah. We had to do a a big layoff a couple years ago, and I was getting different advice about how to do it.
Yeah.
And to some degree, it's like to thine own self be true, but it was really, really helpful in that time, which was really difficult.
Yeah, cool.
And I mean, listen, like just an acknowledgement that being an entrepreneur is hard, running a business is really hard. You're gonna have high highs and low lows, and understanding that you're hardly the only one who's been through this.
Yeah. Two pivot people. Who are two people that have changed the direction of your life?
I mean, this may be a cop out, but I'm just gonna put it out there. I would say my parents. I mean, they were both entrepreneurs, and were struggling entrepreneurs when I was a little kid, and so I think it certainly imbued in me a scarcity mindset and just like happiness within a scarcity mindset. And they've also really, I think, embodied what is a healthy relationship. That certainly is something I look to today for my wife and our 4 kids. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that I could be where I am without a lot of their support in all sorts of different ways.
Awesome. Love that.
I'm going to deviate from the last question. I'll ask the quote question in a minute, but you brought up your wife. Where'd you meet her? What's she like?
Yeah. So she's my rock. I met her. We started dating freshman year in college. So we've been together now 26 years, I think. This will be our 20th anniversary this year.
Cool.
So pretty exciting. Congrats. But yeah, she's amazing. And it's like to some degree opposites attract, but then over the years you kind of blend. Similar person, and we've kind of taken each other's roles, but yeah, whereas I am more extroverted, certainly a risk taker, she's much more conservative. Her sign is a Cancer, and so she's definitely like the CEO of our home and just creates a nurturing, loving environment for our 4 boys, and is always kind of there to support when I need her. So yeah, she's amazing, and no question, like literally and figuratively, I could not be where I am today without her support. I left my last like full-time job 10 days before our wedding.
Wow.
Yeah, to put it in perspective.
You've been doing this together for a while. That's cool.
Yeah. She's certainly been my better half in every sense of the word for a long time.
I love it.
Amazing.
All right, quote. What's a pivot quote? A quote that's either driven your life or
I've got 2.
Sure.
I've got 2 actually.
We'll allow it this time.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
But not next time.
So the first is something I learned as a commercial real estate broker maybe 20 years ago or so. You always tell the truth, so then you don't have to remember.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have had this experience where it's like you're talking to somebody and something just doesn't sound right. And then maybe you're talking to them 6-12 months later and and it sounds different. And you're like, I will never look at you the same way again because now I know you lied to me.
Yeah. I think about that on podcasting because I tell, hundreds of stories over time. Like, if I just start to make, like, if I like embellish things, like, I'll just forget and I'll tell the same story differently a year later. So I have to tell the truth. So I never have to remember anything.
Exactly.
Was that Mark Twain said that?
I don't know.
Did we just attribute everything to Mark Twain or Abe Lincoln?
I heard it from a commercial broker.
Okay, yeah.
The one thing I remember about him is he drove a Bentley. Yeah, he was just a really interesting character, but it was a great quote. It always stuck with me. And the second one is from a Chinese philosopher called Lao Tzu, founder of Taoism. And I think about it a lot as an entrepreneur in that it's water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and does not yield. And thinking about just be like water, right? And whether it's the legal challenges or angry neighbors or just people who don't understand what we're doing or the good work that I know that we are achieving because I get to see it firsthand, and just kind of let it flow through you and know that, like, whether it's the trend line or just your self-fulfillment, like, chill.
Beautiful.
I love that quote. It's amazing. All right, next segment, past, present, and future. So let's look at your past first. If you could go back and talk to 20-year-old Atticus, what advice would you give him?
So yeah, I could go a couple ways with this. I'm going to pick a health one though. So I was a swimmer from like age 7 through college. But I never really learned to lift properly. And in large part, that's why I ended up having back surgery when I was 34. So was just doing more than I was capable of and lifting incorrectly. So yeah, like that's one. If I could go back, I would want to make sure that if I'm building the pizza oven again, I probably just fork out the $2,000 and buy the pizza oven rather than building it myself.
Yeah.
But also lifting correctly. That's I think that would be a big one.
Cool.
Yeah, health maintenance generally.
Awesome.
Present question. What is something you've added into your life recently that could be a habit, trait, routine that has given you a better life?
So more recently, like as I age, I feel like not just 40, but like 43, I noticed forgetting things more regularly than I had previously. So kind of back to Atomic Habits now, I have this kind of daily like mind exercise where whether it's crossword and then just mental games and trying to do that every day to stay sharp.
Cool.
I just remembered you reminded me to remind you, talking about swimming, he can hold his breath for 4.5 minutes.
Tell us about the 4.5 minute holding breath. Tell us about this.
So like I've always been, I mean, I was a swimmer for a long time. So, and I know I'm not standing up, but I'm only 5'9". So I was college swimmer, 5'9". Like those things don't really compute. But I think one of the reasons why I was pretty good was lung capacity. And so I've always had a pretty significant lung capacity. But yeah, I was introduced to this Wim Hof method this past year. And I've been out of the pool for a long time, guys. Over 20 years now. But yeah, shockingly, doing this Wim Hof breathing exercise, just got to the third round of the breathing exercise, and I was like, oh gosh. That's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I did his breathing on this is gonna be one of those like Mark Twain, don't if you remember, because I don't remember the exact number, but I did the Wim Hof thing. It was like a 10-minute or 15-minute YouTube video, and it was like you breathe through the whole thing, and it was like, I breathe out, which is weird. You think you'd hold your breath and breathe out, and then I sat there and I'm like watching the minute go by, and I'm like, I went a whole minute. I haven't done this in years. Went around again, 2 minutes, and I'm pretty sure I hit 3:30. And it blew my mind.
After the exhale, too, right?
After the exhale. That's the wild part. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's wild. Anyway.
Yeah,
so
it is.
But 4.5 is even more nuts.
Is that how you're supposed to do it? Like if you're trying to, like if you're going to go under the water and hold your breath,
I don't think underwater.
I haven't done it that way.
Yeah, no, but just the Wim Hof thing, he's like, now breathe out, and then, which again doesn't make any sense, but it's because you're hyperoxygenating.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because you're like so forcefully breathing in and out, the idea, and I don't know if there's real science behind this or not, but you're hyperoxygenating your cells, and so you want to get the carbon dioxide out.
Oh, interesting.
And then
that would make sense.
Letting the oxygen in your cells take over. But yeah, I was 435, and after I did that, I was like, okay, this is too much.
I could die here.
This is too weird. Free divers do that out here in Hawaii all the time. They'll go out for 5 or 10 minutes, and they just do a breathing thing first, hyperoxygenate, and go down. It's just
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the cold plunge. I mean, in a sense, you just get in there and you start, and you get all tingly feeling and that dopamine.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to do some fun research, look up the aqua mammalian reflex, where like as mammals, when you think about whales or dolphins or whatever, and like we have that too, where apparently if you put cold water on your face, like your pulse rate slows down.
Interesting.
And that's apparently why. And also, like when you dive down deep enough, when you free dive down deep enough, apparently your organs there's plasma flow in and out or something. Where you can deal with the pressure. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a whole thing around pressure where like they don't have to do like the whole like the bends doesn't happen. And
exactly. If you take a breath,
you don't have to stop.
Go down. Yeah, as long as you don't take your buddy's oxygen.
Yeah, that's the But anyway, wild.
So
all right,
cool. All right, last question for you. Future. So, and you said you have 4 boys?
I do.
Okay. So what do you want your 4 boys to say about you someday when you're gone? Hopefully that's a long time away, but what would you want them to say about you?
So my oldest is now 17. But I think I already got there, and it would just be the universality in this to continue to be true. But I think it was last year sometime when we were sitting down, and we're very similar, so we often butt heads. But we were sitting at the table, and he told me at some point that he was proud of me. So I was just like, oh man. So I want that to continue to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the interview questions I often ask is, what do you want on your epitaph?
Yeah.
And for me, it's largely that I got stuff done.
Yeah.
Right. And that, it's always hard to kind of keep moving forward, but yeah, to know that you got stuff done and then you did it as a loving father and husband.
Super, man.
Amazing.
All right, let's wrap it up. First of all, what are you excited about in your life? What's coming up, business, life, whatever? What's happening in the future that you're pumped about?
So I always say the role of an entrepreneur is to like peel off every layer of responsibility that you have and hand it to somebody who's infinitely more capable than you are.
Which we could do a whole show just on on that topic, but some other day.
So we've just made a bunch of new hires, and just super excited about what we've got on the team, and they are very experienced. I think more capable than I am in a lot of ways, and so really just excited for the year ahead for PadSplit. And let the horses run, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. And where can people find you at?
You mean like social media?
Social media wise, if
Your
that's
house address, if you...
Yeah,
I mean,
give us your house address. Yeah.
I have a Twitter /X account, although I'm almost never on there. LinkedIn is the best place to find me, honestly. I write a newsletter on LinkedIn and often publish a lot of the stats that I ran through today.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm just always interested in nerding out on housing stuff. But yeah, LinkedIn's the best place.
And then PadSplit is just at PadSplit.
PadSplit.com. And yeah, you can launch today. PadSplit.com/Brandon Turner is.
Oof, I got a special URL.
Yes, you got your own.
I got my own
page.
URL.
Yeah.
Hey, go there because you should definitely go there. And then that way we know that you came from this podcast, which is cool. What was I going to ask you on that point though? I don't remember. Whatever.
Any special offers?
I don't know. Do we have any special offers?
We do.
Do we really?
We do. Yeah.
You guys that's all taking responsibility off me onto other people. Tell us about the special offers for people.
So we have a special offer if you register through this podcast and go to
Brandon Turner.
We will credit you $1,000 on your first payout if you talk to an account exec in the next 10 days.
That is awesome. I did not know. You guys are good. My team is good. All right. I appreciate that. That's very cool. Y'all should do it anyway. I mean, even if it weren't for the benefit, do it anyway because we need cash flow. Cash flow is not dead. That's actually the title of my short little ebook that I made. Is Cash Flow is not dead. It's found in things like PadSplit, so I'm a huge fan of it. Huge fan of what you're doing. I actually do believe you are doing massive good for the U.S. In a way that I don't think most people recognize. So I appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you being here.
Amazing.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that's it.
Should we do it?
The three-way fist bump doesn't work. We're going to have to do it somehow. I don't know. We have every episode now for 120 episodes. We've ended with a fist bump.
We can do that.
We're going to have to just,
boom.
It worked. There we go.
There we go.
And that, my friends, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode or if you just enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback and we read the comments. We make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people, and the more reviews we get, the more people hear it and watch the show and share it, and it's awesome. Last but not least, please head over to social media. Consider befriending me, following me, subscribing to all that stuff at Better Life and my personal page at Beardy Brandon, especially over on Instagram, YouTube, and really everywhere else. So thank you again for listening. I'm honored that you would bring me along on your journey toward building wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. Now, this show is about living a better life, but if you want my opinion on what it takes to live the best life ever, just go to abetterlife.com/best life to hear some of my views on life and spirituality. I think you'll like it. abetterlife.com/best life. With that said, thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next week.